I would like to cast Wish. That's a super good spell. I know, and I'm gonna use it in the worst way. Oh no! I'm gonna cast Wish to make the bad guys disappear. What a way to use Wish. Roll the dice to see if you can ever cast it again. Well, it's a 33% chance. Let's hope it doesn't. Whoops! I can't anymore. I can never cast Wish again. Fuck! Hello, everybody! Welcome to a new episode. Welcome back to High Level Dungeons and Dragons. I am Offbeat Outlaw, and today's topic is Wish. How are you at high level D&D, as in level 17 plus, supposed to use Wish and deal with Wish from both the player perspective and the Dungeon Master perspective? When we're going through this, the first section is going to be very much so a warning to players, and something that you as a Dungeon Master should be discouraging your players from doing. Merely, not only is it in bad faith and it's kind of rude and is a terrible use of Wish, the next three sections are going to be, at high level D&D, the most common uses of Wish, how to deal with it as a Dungeon Master, and how to use it effectively as players. Now, that being said, let's get into it. Reminder, please join my Patreon if you like my videos. If you like my videos and want me to make more of them, supporting me on Patreon is the best way to do that. It's only $3 a month, and it goes a long way to helping keeping this channel alive. So if that interests you, please head on over. So, I wrote notes down for this one. So, the worst. First, let us take a look at what Wish actually says. Wish! Now, this is a very complicated spell. It's got 7 different layers to it. Let's go through them. Wish is the mightiest spell a mortal creature can cast. By simply speaking aloud, you can alter the very foundations of reality in accord with your desires. The basic use of this spell is to duplicate any other spell of 8th level or lower. You don't need to meet any requirements in that spell, including costly components. The spell simply takes effect. Alternatively, you can create one of the following effects of your choice. You can create one object of up to 25,000 GP in value that isn't a magic item. The object can be no more than 300 feet in any dimension, and it appears in an unoccupied space you can see on the ground. You allow up to 20 creatures you can see to regain all hit points, and you end all effects on them described in the Greater Restoration effect. You can grant up to 10 creatures you can see resistance to a damage type you choose. You grant up to 10 creatures you can see immunity to a single spell or other magical effect for 8 hours. For instance, you can make yourself and companions immune to a Lich's life drain attack. You undo a single recent event by forcing a reroll of any roll made within the last round, including your last turn. Reality reshapes itself to accommodate the new result. For example, a Wish could undo opponent's successful save, a foe's crit, or a friend's failed save. You can force the reroll to be made with advantage or disadvantage, and you can choose whether the reroll or the original. You might be able to achieve something beyond the scope of the above examples. This just goes blah blah blah. The stress of casting the spell to produce any effect other than duplicating another spell weakens you. After enduring that stress, each time you cast a spell until you finish a long rest, you take 1d10 necrotic damage per level of that spell. This damage can't be reduced or prevented in any way. In addition, your strength drops to 3 if it isn't 3 or lower already for 2d4 days. For each of those days you spend resting and doing nothing more than light activity, your remaining recovery time decreases by 2 days. Finally, there is a 33% chance that you are unable to cast Wish ever again if you suffer this stress. Now that right there is the sticking point. That is the sticking point. This is a massive spell. It is obviously an incredibly powerful spell that you need to learn how to use effectively as you reach high-level Dungeons and Dragons. But that final point, there's a 33% chance you're unable to cast it ever again if you do anything other than duplicate a spell. Means that only in the most dire of circumstances should you ever cast anything other than an 8th level or lower spell. Think about it like this. If I had an infinite number of these, anything less than infinite, even any finite amount of casting, is basically 0 in comparison. For a spell that can define how builds work and can often accomplish more with clever application of other spells, there's rarely a good time in which you should use any effect other than replicating an 8th level or lower spell. And this is due to how Wish works. Wish is capable of circumventing costly material components and casting times. This casting times thing is really important because there are a lot of spells that are usually about, I'd say maybe, that are like, can even be as low as 5th level, that are simply that are rarely used because they're despite being very powerful, due to the incredibly long casting time. Another way to think about this is, if there's a 33% chance that you are unable to cast Wish ever again if you suffer this stress, this is, if you want to figure out, like, what are the chances of you never casting Wish if you cast it 10 times, like, in this manner, as you approach, like, time number 10 or even number 5, your chances start reaching levels of, like, 70%, 80% chance of never casting Wish again. For a spell that is this powerful, you want to cast it as many times as possible. I would rarely recommend using it for anything other than replicating an 8th level or lower spell. So I've given a lot of how you shouldn't use it at this point. How should you be casting Wish? That is, of course, replicating 8th level or lower spells. There are tons of excellent spells at your disposal that you can use to drastically improve your gameplay at high level that will allow you to accomplish basically what any other Wish might want to do. Another reason why you shouldn't use Wish in like I wish for the encounter to disappear, it's bad faith. It's unfun. And the Dungeon Master can always screw with it. They can always monkey paw your Wish and make it horrible. If you're trying to screw over your DM with Wish in that manner, they probably should screw over your Wish. But using it to replicate 8th level or lower spells is a perfectly acceptable thing and becomes a cornerstone of high-level Dungeons & Dragons. I highly suggest that you use it to do this. I'm emphasizing this so much because it's so cool. Let's see what spells we could cast. Spell number 1. I would like to cast Similacrum. Oh no, there are 2 of me now. This is so much worse. Similacrum can become the cornerstone of most builds at high level simply because of its versatility and all-around usefulness. There is never a situation in which you don't want a Similacrum on your team. It is just always an applicable thing. For those who don't know what a Similacrum is usually a spell that is the following. It is a 7th level illusion spell. Casting time 12 hours, range of touch. One beast or humanoid that is within range for the entire casting time of the spell. Verbal, somatic material, snore or ice made to duplicate. 15,000 GP of gold powdered ruby is the main thing, and they last until they are dispelled. Similacrum is naturally only a spell that can be learned by wizards. Wish allows it to be used by many other classes. So as you can see, there are a few things about this spell that make it unwieldy to use in regular play. First of all, it's casting time. 12 hours. That is a long time in game. That is a long stretch. That basically requires an entire adventuring day to make the Similacrum. Meaning that you're not going to be able to do it every time. You might be able to plan for some things and get this in your downtime, but you're not going to be able to plan this out as a daily thing. You can't build around a 7th level cast of this. However, with Wish, remember, Wish gets around that casting time. Wish only costs an action. You can now have a Similacrum every single day, and the power of a Similacrum cannot be understated. It can take actions and otherwise be affected as a normal creature. It appears to be the same as the original, but half the hit points and formed without any equipment. Otherwise, the illusion uses all the stats of the creature it duplicates. The Similacrum is friendly and to creatures you designate. It obeys your spoken commands, moving and acting in accordance with your wishes, and acting on your turn in combat. The Similacrum lacks the ability to learn or become more powerful, so it never increases its level or other abilities, nor can it regain expended spell slots. If the Similacrum is damaged, you can repair it in an alchemical laboratory using rare herbs and minerals worth 100 GP per hit point it regains. Lasts until it drops to 0, at which point it reverts to snow and ice instantly. If you cast a spell again, any currently active duplicates you created are instantly destroyed. So using this at 7 levels is very difficult, because not only can they not regain hit points, they can't regain spell slots, meaning they are essentially, they are guns that cannot be reloaded. Once they have spent their abilities, they are done. Now, with the words as written on a Similacrum, they can technically regain, like short rest abilities, because it can only not regain spell slots. However, rules as intended, it can't regain anything that it has spent. This is a worthwhile distinction because I think both are perfectly valid rulings based on your campaign. Dungeon Masters, feel free to rule that as you wish. I typically rule that you can regain some class abilities, specifically stuff like action surges, Hexblade's Curse, Battle Master Techniques, those type of abilities. I do not allow the abilities that are basically just spells like Mystic Arcanums and whatnot, typically. So with the Simulacrum, you basically double the amount of resources that you have every single day for the cost of a 9th level spell slot. That is an incredibly powerful thing to do. Especially if you have time to prepare for your missions, casting a Simulacrum the day prior will allow you personally to still have your 9th level spell slot. You have a Simulacrum and you just have double the resources. It is an incredibly powerful use. This is how you as players should be very consistently trying to get a Simulacrum up and ready to play. How do Dungeon Masters, do you guys counterplay this? Well, obviously, Simulacrums last until they are dispelled. Spell magic is critical. This is a spell that you see on almost every single high-level monster stat block since Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. Obviously, Monsters of the Multiverse, but they still have it. They still have dispel magic. Why? It is because of this. It is, in my opinion, because of strategies like Simulacrums. They become so prolific that oftentimes it is just advantageous to have an ability to, on those Simulacrums as fast as possible. Oftentimes as well, these creatures will have legendary actions that allow them to cast spells such as Dispel Magic. That is a very critical way to get around it. And if your Dispel Magic keeps on getting counterspelled, fine. That is 100% fine. Make them use up that reaction so that when it gets to your turn, you can hit them with a big elemental blast with a saving throw on it, and their Absorb Elements won't be able to go off. Absorb Elements is another critical spell to play around, but if they're spending their reaction every round counterspelling you, dispelling their Simulacrum, they're going to leave themselves very vulnerable to other strategies. Definitely consider putting Dispel Magic on your monsters to get rid of Simulacrums. Additionally, Simulacrums can't regain health. If you whittle them away over the course of a day, they will die. Next, Hallow. Hallow is another excellent spell. I'm gonna make a giant area that is mine. What do you mean it's yours? I mean, it's mine. Oh. And Hallow, I think, Hallow as well covers a lot of what some of the other applications of Wish are. Hallow reads as follows. You touch a point and infuse an area around it with holy or unholy power. The area can have a radius of up to 60 feet. The spell fails if the radius includes an area already under the effect of a Hallow spell. The affected area is subjected to the following. First, Celestials, Elementals, Fae, Fiends, and Undead can't enter the area, nor can such creatures charm, frighten, or possess creatures within it. Any creature charmed or frightened or possessed by such a creature is no longer charmed or frightened or possessed upon entering the area. You can exclude one or more of those types of creatures from this effect. Secondly, you can bind an extra effect to the area. Choose the effect from the following list, or choose an effect offered by the DM. Some of the effects apply to creatures in the area. You can designate whether the effects apply to all creatures, creatures that follow a specific deity or leader, creatures of a specific sort, such as orcs or trolls. When a creature that would be affected enters the spell area for the first time on a turn or starts its turn there, it can make a charisma saving throw. On a success, the creature ignores the extra effect until it leaves. Here are some of the extra effects. Now, some of the creatures can't be frightened. That's a great buff. Darkness fills the area. Daylight fills the area. Energy protection. Affected creatures in the area have resistance to one damage type of your choice except for bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing. This looks very familiar to one of the wishes that you can cast. That would force you to have to suffer a bunch of bullshit. This gives that for free. It's just the cost of a wish. This is usually a 5th level spell. This is what you should be using your wishes on, right? Casting Wish to cast Hallow is a great way to buff the health and the resistance of your party. Everlasting Rest, dead bodies can't be unturned into undead. Extra dimensional interference, creatures can't move or travel using teleportation. Also do energy vulnerability. Affected creatures in the area have vulnerability to one damage type of your choice, except for bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing. Another great use. But as you can see, so why is this spell not usually cast? Well, it usually takes 24 hours to cast and requires 1,000 GP of herbs, oils, and incense, which the spell consumes. And the duration is until dispelled. So this is another excellent way to use your wish. It is a spell that fits the requirements of Wish of being an 8th level or lower spell. It can grant resistance to help buff your party. And additionally, it can potentially instead inflict vulnerability onto a target of your choice. But that does require a saving throw, and you can bet your ass that's getting legendary resisted. But this is a great spell that everyone who uses Wish frequently should have in their minds, especially as they start entering boss fights. First, you can completely shunt out a bunch of dangerous creatures. such as the Fae, the Fiends, Undead, Celestials, and whatnot. You can just force them out and ban them essentially from the area. So if you're going up against something like that in a fight, you can just whoop. Now the only way, now its duration, once again, is until dispelled, meaning that it can be dispelled. So what do you have to do as a player? You know, you gotta protect it. If this is going to be your defensive strategy against a boss, you need to be protecting it with your counter spells. You need to be protecting this feature, frankly, because your life does depend on it. This is a downside in comparison to the Wish version of this, where you just give everyone resistance. But at the very least, you aren't cucking yourself for the rest of the fight. You can still fight. You can still cast spells. You can still do everything else that you would want to do without any remorse. But this is going to be the target of dispelling. And Dungeon Masters, how do you play around this? Dispel magic. There's a reason it's on every single high-level monster. It's because you need it. Otherwise, strategies like the one I'm telling you right now are going to absolutely screw you over, and there's nothing you can do about it. You need to have Dispel magic on your high-level creatures. Another thing is that this is a massive area that is effectively a controlled space. Creatures can't enter it of a certain type. If you're going up into a war scenario as a player, this is a great way to to batten down the hatches and say this area is ours and claim the space. It lasts until dispelled. Dispel magic is an easy enough spell to get, but if you defend it with successful enough counterspells, it can be a really, really useful tool in certain encounters. Finally, the last use of Wish that I would recommend for a player to keep on their mind and a dungeon master to play around is that of a heal. I'd like to heal, but you're a wizard. Yes. Yes. Wizards can't do that. Yes, I know. I'm going to do it. What? Yes, using a 9th level wish is for healing can be viable at high level. Now, when should you use this? Keep in mind, healing making your class centered around healing, I rarely would suggest to anyone. This is a hard role to have fun with. It can feel quite boring. It can feel like you're not really helping much. But healing, this does not mean that healing isn't useful in 5e. It just means that there are specific moments when you need it. So if you have access to it, be prepared to use it when the moment strikes. And Wish has that ability. It has that ability listed in one of its additional effects, but keep in mind we want to avoid using these as much as possible, where it can restore everyone's hit points up to max. And if you need it, if the moment is dire, you're the last one standing, use it. I think that is a perfectly acceptable use. However, if you can avoid it, here's some other things you can do. Now, when should you use heal? Ideally, you should be healing when you already have a Similacrum from the previous day that still has most of its slots, and someone is about to go down. These are the scenarios in which, as a player, you might want to use your Wish for a heal. Now, why would you do this? This has to do with action economy. You need to make sure you aren't falling behind. You need to make sure that no one is wasting their turn making death saves, including yourself. If you find yourself about to die, about to go down, if you look and see someone else is about to die and go down, and they haven't taken their turn yet, you need to keep them up. You need to make sure that they can survive the turn. Surviving the turn can often be more important. Now, why did I specify you should have a Simulacrum up? This is to ensure that your spot in the action economy is still fulfilled via your Simulacrum. Otherwise, you are just kind of going to be wasting your action economy unless you manage to heal 2 or more people. So there are times when you should be using your Wish to heal your party, especially if you find that you are about to go down, if someone's about to die, if you're running out of time, if you yourself next turn are going to be making death saves, definitely heal yourself. But that is the moment for a heal. There's a reason why healing exists in 5th edition. It's because you're supposed to use it. It doesn't mean that you should be building a whole class around it, but having the ability to keep people up is a much different thing than being a dedicated healer. And how do you play around this as Dungeon Master? Well, you can always counterspell Wish. As long as you as the Dungeon Master are screwing with their action economy, preventing them from getting making them have to think about their turn, making them have to think and play around the options that they currently have available to them, you are doing your job. Not every fight, not every table requires you to be a cutthroat DM that is always gunning after your player character's lives. However, there always does need to be some sense of tension, and as long as you are creating that, you are doing your job. What I've given you here today are tools to create that tension. Dispelling simulacrums, dispelling those hallows, counterspelling wish. Those are all ways to ensure that you are putting enough tension on the party. And if your players are never ever using their wishes to heal, that means you aren't doing enough damage. It means that if they are considering that as an option, you need to be putting on the pressure. These, in my opinion, are the 3 best ways to use wish as a player, how best to counteract them as a dungeon master, and of course the way that we should never use wish unless absolutely dire. What'd you guys think? If you liked this video, please let me know in the comment section below. Remember to like and subscribe, bing the bell, tell your friends, support the Patreon. If you want to see a follow-up video that goes really into the nitty-gritty of how to play around this stuff as a dungeon master, I think I did a decent enough job to give you ideas. But if you need some more support, please let me know. I would love to make another video. Other than that, get the fuck out of my house.